It's 4 minutes to 8. She's known for her insightful celebrity interviews, in-depth columns and being the much better half of Piers Morgan.
Now, author and journalist Celia Walden is venturing into the world of thrillers with her first offering, Payday, and she joins us now.
Hello.
It's great to see you.
It's good to see
you. The real wife.
The real wife. Well, as I was always saying, you were a far better wife than I was, and there were moments when I thought Susanna would know how to deal with this, you know. And I love that there was all people tried to play up this rivalry between me and Susanna, and it was like, no, honestly, you should hear the conversations
Have you missed that balance then?
Of having another wife.
Yes, of him having the extra wife to take out his...
I do think if you could please just have him back, and he'll probably storm on at any minute anyway. So I hope you've got security primed outside.
Well, we're going to talk about the novel in just a moment.
Yes.
But what is... I mean, obviously I'm in touch with him. He's my friend. He's our friend. What is he going to do?
That is a good question. Well, he's got some irons in the fire.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll be kicking around the house for much longer.
No, I expect you probably don't want him to be.
No, I think that's probably enough, although it was quite fun this morning, I've got to say, doing the old turning the tables, leaving the snooze button on, which was always a pet hate of mine, slamming every door in the house very early this morning. And so that was fun.
You're the one going out to work.
Yes, exactly.
You're the one taking the revenge.
Exactly.
One of the things that always make... Because we used to discuss the fact that he was like a toddler and I would sort of look after him like daycare and then hand him back to you.
Yes.
But what was... Look at that. I think that's the night you first met, wasn't it?
I think it was, yes.
What always struck me was Piers and I used to argue hammer and tongs on the programme. You know, that was part of the dynamic. You and Piers never argue at home. Has that changed in the last 6 months?
No,
He's been there all the time.
I'm not going to lie, it's been a challenge, but I think we don't really argue. I think we're sort of too busy in our own worlds. But it was quite helpful that he used to just expend so much energy on the show that by the time he came home, it was totally sort of flatlined on the sofa and everyone could just get on with their day. So that was good.
So he exercised what he needed to on air.
He would, very early in the morning.
He can be laid back.
Yes, exactly.
Well, you have put all your energy into this terrific novel. And it is terrific. And I'm not just saying that because it's you. I found it really hard over the last year and a half to read fiction. Yeah. And then you sent this to me, and with a lovely note about, did I know anybody who was impossible to work with? And if I did, I might enjoy reading this. And it's terrific. It's quite ruthless and brutal, this book.
Well, it is quite brutal. I've always been fascinated by the idea of women, unlikely bonds between women. And I think nothing bonds people quite like hating the same man. I feel like everything I'm saying has got terrible parallels now. But I like the idea of there being these three women of totally different generations and completely different characters, all of whom hate the same man and are bonded by this. And that bond gets horribly dark.
And it is interesting because they do have a kind of love-hate relationship with him. He's not a wholly villainous character.
No, because I think it's boring when you get wholly villainous characters. You know, people have two sides, don't they? And often the most hateful people are sort of strangely alluring or can have amazing charisma.
I think you've given it to a number of men in your family to read.
Yes.
And they've all been quite shocked about the women in the book.
Well, I'm always fascinated. I think that men are not quite... They're far less brutal than we are in many ways. And a lot of the men, you know, Piers, my brother, my father even, sort of thought, God, is this really how women think? And they would want to read something far gentler. But I do think that women, the kind of sort of internal... sort of complex emotions that women go through, particularly when they've been through what these three women have, is quite something.
So have you noticed them looking at you slightly differently now?
Yes, definitely. When Piers read it, he read it in 48 hours, but he kept looking up at me in this kind of, is this what goes on in your head? And he was all the way through when I kept asking for sort of tips on, you know, I couldn't work out how to make a character die, and I would say, should he be impaled on a... And we'd be lying in bed at night, and I'd come out with these things, and there would be a pause, and he'd go, I don't know, but your pillow talk really needs work.
One of the brilliant things is that, of course, once you've written a pacey book like this, that then, you know, Netflix, all of those kind of television streaming services might come to you and say, I tell you what, this would make a great box set, box set.
I mean, I'm biased, but I think it would too. And I am in conversations, put it that way.
Already?
So hopefully, yes. So hopefully there will be something.
And there's a sequel coming as well, is there?
There's a second book, but it's not a sequel.
OK.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So those characters have had their day.
Well, I mean, seem to have, yes.
How was that? How do you find the idea of writing a thriller as well, though, being able to sit down and do... Because it's not the sort of books and the writing you usually do.
No. Well, it's, I mean, it's obviously longer term, and the great thing with journalism is you write something and then it's done and you move on to the next thing. But then there's something really enthralling about living inside other people's heads, and particularly during lockdown, just heaven to be able to go up, lock yourself in a room and live in a sort of much more exciting world.
It strikes me, you know, as we're talking, of course, as you'd said, there is lots of resonance here, isn't there? And our relationship has had its parallels. Going back 6 months to that moment where your actual husband, my television husband at the time, stormed off the set, you were unaware, weren't you, of that happening, despite the fact that, obviously, it felt like the world was watching.
Yes.
You were sort of blissfully unaware.
I don't know where. I think I must have been in the gym or something, and then suddenly got home and everything had exploded. Yeah, so it was a big deal, and there were lots of people outside the house, and you know, it's been a strange few months, but I think Piers is very jubilant today, as you would expect, and I think that statement, the Ofcom statement, was very strongly worded and robust, and so that was great.
And, of course, you know, part of the dynamic of the programme was reflected in that Ofcom statement, which is that there's clearly a right of freedom of speech and of challenge.
Yes.
You know, and that was always what we did, that whatever anybody said, that was, you know, I mean, I was in an eternal argument with him because I disagreed with pretty much 99.9% of what he said.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself disagreeing or agreeing largely?
We disagree about lots of things, but it was interesting the other day, we were having quite a sort of robust conversation with his mother, actually, and my daughter, who's 9, said, you know, why was everyone yelling at each other? And I said, no, darling, they were having a conversation, and people can disagree with each other, and it can even get quite heated, but it's all perfectly, it's part of family life, it's part of normal life, you know.
It's interesting. I remember us talking about this a while back, and you were saying one of those first experiences, and my wife had this with my family, and how heated and engaged everybody comes and vociferous with their conversation. And she really struggled initially because that hadn't been her experience. I remember you saying that one Christmas you had to get to the point where you would just leave.
Yes,
you know, just get up and leave because I don't want to be a part of that. And it took Annie a long time to understand it. It didn't mean we hated each other. It just meant that we were sort of particularly passionate about whatever it was we were discussing.
Yes, I do think there's something very healthy about that. And just getting it all out there, and there are these families who do that, and it's great. But you're not always going to. You shouldn't agree with each other 100%, should you?
No.
I don't.
I totally agree with you. You shouldn't.
There you go.
20% would have been nice, though, Susanna.
I totally
20%.
agree with you. I usually mostly disagreed with him.
Yes, I know.
But I have to say, it is not... Where is it? There it is. I've hidden it. I don't want... I've literally got about 10 pages left. And I don't want to get...
So you don't know?
Because don't you find that with novels and with characters, you sort of almost... You don't want to let them
leave
go.
Them, yes.
If you really enjoy them,
I agree. If you enjoyed them. Yes. Yeah, that's true.
It's lovely to see you, Celia.
Thank you.
Send our very best.
I will.
He's not coming back. We know that.
Anytime you want him, he's available. Just let me know.
Just randomly on play dates or whatever it might be.
Anything.
Thanks for coming.
And very best wishes with the novel. Good luck. You don't need it. It sounds like, you know, they're
Look forward to watching it on a streaming service very soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Celia.